With qualifying in the books and the running order set, Brian and I are here to break down the DraftKings slate. Who's the targets, who's the fades, and where's the smart money this week on this week's Angle of Pursuit podcast.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack. Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
Brian Twining, another week, another NASCAR race. We watched qualifying this morning. We watched practice, getting into and out of green flag pit stops.
They didn't even air much of that. They cut it off because of how unimportant.
It for 3 minutes and let's close it.
Yeah.
For those of you that did miss it, there's a new rule for green flag pit stops. You have to be at 90 miles an hour going around the final turn, and then 45 going into the pits. As Kevin Harvick said, they've only done it like once under the new configuration, but it is something that could be concerning. And if they do have to run green flag pit stops, it is something that worries me with a few of our guys sometimes having issues consistently on pit road. And now they have an extra thing to worry about, and it's a new thing. So there might be in like the mentality of just keeping the car going and not really think about it. But it is something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're building lineups, as you're finalizing your betting card.
Yeah, because they did it during both of last year's races, and it is interesting that Ryan Blaney was one of the guys that got caught speeding, and it put him down, I believe, 3 laps.
Yeah. Because
not only do you go down a lap when you pit under green, which is not normal for a super speedway type race, but because of the track size, actually only 1.5 miles, that you're going to go a lap down if you pit under green. And then when you speed, the fact that you have to go down to pit road speed and everybody else is going 180 miles an hour on this short track, you're likely to lose 2 more laps. So it is something that is worrisome when you're looking at betting cards and then also playing DFS, because if you have guys that are starting at the back, yes, at like Daytona and Talladega, they can easily get those placement points. But if they're riding in the back for the majority of the day and they pit under green and they're one of those unlucky guys, then not only are they in the back, but they're also going to be multiple laps down and have almost no shot to move up. So this does offer a little bit more risk than we'd see at Daytona, for instance.
For sure, 100%. Just a friendly reminder, if you have yet to do so, check out our Angle of Pursuit Substack, AOP podcast.substack.com. I'll link it in the description. Brian and I will have our final betting card. We'll have our favorite picks, and then we'll have a few DraftKings thoughts on there as well. Maybe we'll do an underdog pick 'em, because it's as of time of recording, the underdog lines weren't up as qualifying just finished probably, I don't know, an hour or so ago, maybe 2 hours at this point. Trucks just started the race. We will also link to our GridRivals contest. Please come join us. Even though the season started, you can join whenever, and you will automatically start this season with the lowest score that's currently in the league. So obviously right now, if you jump in, that's going to be a 0, because there were a few people who didn't set their lineups for Daytona. Wait, so I'm still at 0, even though
Yes.
So if I had joined after Daytona, I would get points.
No. If you joined after Daytona, you're going to start with 0. Because it's the lowest scoring total in the league at the moment that you join. But you're only 1 race down. That's the thing. Yeah. But anyways, so it's still open to join. We've only completed 1 race. That's not really a lot. It's super speedway. Anybody can hit the jackpot or lose all their money there. So, it's free. You get a chance to win a $100 Fanatics gift card if you can beat me and Kyle throughout the season.
And considering I have 0, it seems like it's going to be pretty easy to beat me.
But yeah, so come join. It helps us out, and you can have a lot of fun managing your own team based on salaries and contract lengths and all that stuff. It's a lot of fun.
And if you have questions, at Brian_Twining on Twitter, he will happily answer anything you have. If you're trying to figure out how long to do the contracts and all that stuff, he can give you some sage advice. Okay, Substack. Make sure you are subscribed. We were ever so close to 700. I appreciate everybody who's been adding a subscription over the past couple weeks. it really does mean a lot. The content has been doing really, really well. We appreciate everybody watching, people commenting. Let us know down in the comments your favorite driver, say below, let's say 7K and below. So you can go Austin Cindric or below. Where's the best value? Who's the guy that you need to make lineups work, can be a cheap option that kind of helps you finagle stuff together. As Brian said, we are at Atlanta this week. It's not a full super speedway, but it's a pretty dang close replica.
Yeah.
There is going to be some carnage. There is going to be some wild stuff. Don't be afraid to leave salary. Don't be afraid to target those back markers. All of that good stuff. So Brian, let's jump into the odds and take a look, or I guess not the odds, the pricing, and figure out where to get involved. Just a little bit. There we go. That's much cleaner. All right. So Denny Hamlin starting 13th at 10.5. Logano starting 2nd, 10.3. Ryan Blaney starting 6th at 10.2. And William Byron at an even 10K. Does the 10K range speak to you this week, or is this a range where you're like, I think I could get more? I'd rather skip this range, spend that money elsewhere, and kind of get some more valuable drivers as we trickle down the pricing list.
Well, okay, first of all, I think it's important to note that last year the two races were dramatically different in how they finished and where guys started in terms of their finishing position. In the spring, you saw, I think it was half of the top 10 finishers all started the race inside the top 10. And then you go to the fall race, there was only one guy that started inside the top, I think it's 14 or something, that actually it was top 11 that started the race. Or there was only one driver that finished inside the top 10 that started the race inside the top 10. So, I mean, two dramatically different results there. In the spring, also, you saw like a handful of dudes that started up in the top 10 lead the majority of the laps. So you can possibly get a dominator at this track, because I don't think it necessarily drives as similar to Daytona as a lot of people think when they call it mini Daytona. I mean, if you watched qualifying today, they were talking about how the track has aged, even though it's only been 3 years since they've done the reconfiguration and the repavement, but there's a lot more bumps on the track. A lot of guys were talking about setting their cars up for handling, which I think will come into play a lot more than what you'd see at Daytona or Talladega, for instance. So I don't hate getting these guys because they're not really starting that far back, and you're surrendering the possibility of placement points with a few of these dudes like a Joey Logano. But in the spring, the top two finishers started inside the top 4. So I don't think it's out of the question here, as opposed to at Daytona, where you almost never want to put one of those guys in your lineup.
Yeah, I'm definitely not loading up on this range, but also like a Blaney at starting 6th at 10.2 is kind of interesting. I think Byron will be pretty popular given his odds and given him starting 11th. Like, of this range, he's definitely probably the most compelling, maybe Denny Hamlin. The Toyotas were a little questionable. Obviously, it's qualifying. You can't take everything there, but the Fords were definitely the dominant manufacturer in qualifying. So, and then obviously we know Hendrick's success here. So Toyotas are kind of third on the pecking order there.
Yeah.
Let's talk the 9K range, because I think this is where it gets interesting. Chase Elliott starting 28th. We know his history here. We know we both have a lot of optimism on him and what he could do for this season. So I think he's going to be really popular, but I think warranted for given what his upside is and what his potential is, especially where he's starting. Kyle Busch looked great. RCR had 2 cars inside that top 10. So that was good to see. 9,700. Kyle Larson starting 5th. 95. Keselowski starting 24th. He's also going to be, I think, extremely popular given, RFK's kind of expectations at these type of tracks and his history. And then ring the bell. Chris Bell started 22nd. We talked about Toyota's lackluster performance, but he's somebody that I'm excited about for this race. I think can be really, really strong. And given where he's starting, I think makes sense. And then obviously Marty Truex rounds out the 9K range, starting 12th. interesting options in there. Some guys starting near the front, near the back, in the middle. Who grabs your attention the most of this range?
It's got to be Chase Elliott. I mean, he's amongst the favorites for the race. I know Brad Keselowski at one point had gotten bet up to the favorite, which was ridiculous because I don't think there should be a single driver that's the favorite at any of the super speedways.
Well, and I think that's what happens is they see a number
Yeah.
like 14, everybody pounds it. All of a sudden he goes up to 10, and then you grab the guys behind him, and then you have a nice little
and then the market starts to correct itself. But I think there's a clear delineation here between guys that are value in DFS and guys who aren't. I mean, when you look at Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, and I mean for the most part, Martin Truex Jr. I don't think I'd feel comfortable having them in my lineups with the possibility of them wrecking or just their past history at speedway tracks like this. Whereas Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and Christopher Bell. I mean, Bell last week at the Daytona 500 was great, and Keselowski was the favorite for a reason, and Chase Elliott's won here twice.
Yep.
So I think those three guys, if you were to just avoid the 10K range, I would not hate putting all three of them in there, but you would going to have to pivot lower in the salary and get a little different because those three are going to be extremely popular.
Yeah, I think starting Elliott Keselowski is really fun, really nice way to start. And then obviously you can do a lot with the rest of the salary. Getting a third guy in can be a little expensive, especially with the 8K range as we dive into there, having some compelling targets. Bubba starting 18th. Ross Chastain starting 21st.
That's right, baby. Watermelon Man.
Watermelon Man could absolutely be dropping one on the track. Tyler Reddick starting 19th. Chris Buescher, the RFK teammate, starting 7th. He looked good, which makes me excited about what Brad could be on Sunday and kind of optimistic. I've been on the Alex Bowman train this week. I think he makes a lot of sense at 8,200. And Eric Jones starting 37th, 8K range, 8K even. Obviously, I think he'll be really strong. I think he'll be really popular. They had some handling issues, and that's why he's starting 37th. But he got to keep his car. He didn't wreck it. He didn't put it into the wall. He didn't have to let it go. So that's really good to see. They need to figure out, tighten it up a little bit, and he'll be just fine. So he's obviously incredibly compelling. I think he'll be popular. But like I'm saying, this range, like I almost want to if I could load up on this range, grab me a Bowman, a Chastain, a Eric Jones, maybe even a Bubba, and start there. It could be really fun too.
Yeah, I wouldn't even hate a Ty Gibbs. I mean, starting mid 20 packs. I do worry about him a little bit. I mean, that's going down into the 8K. But if you wanted to wait, you grab a guy like Ty Gibbs. Chastain's my favorite play this week. Yeah. I think a lot of people. Yes, he wrecked out last week at Daytona, but that was going for the victory. I mean, and again, I'm going to go back to what he said in his post-race interview, is that he waited until the last lap to make that crazy move because he was going for the win, and it wasn't with 9 laps to go. So I think
it wasn't with 9 laps into the race either.
Exactly.
Ross has sometimes gotten a little too aggressive for some.
Yeah, and I think that's important to think about is that maybe he has turned the corner in kind of throttling back the aggressiveness at moments when it's not warranted, and now waiting until the correct moment to do that. And I think that's
also being willing to push it too, and not being worried at the end that I need to maintain the 7th place finish, or I don't want to push someone out of the way and ruin their day.
Exactly. Yeah. So
yell at me again.
For me, it's Chastain or bust in this range. I mean, I'll make a few lineups. I'm going to try not to just get 100% ownership on him, just because that never plays out well for me when I play DFS. But
especially at a super speedway, if we're talking like Vegas or Kansas or something, you want to load up on one driver with a lot more predictability. I get it, but even with Atlanta being a Daytona light, obviously not nearly the same amount of carnage, it's still something you want to be wary of. You don't want to have, I don't know if you want to have 100% of anything, unless you're building 3 lineups, you're going all in on those 3 and are willing to get smoked if things don't go well.
But Larson for me, my favorite. And then obviously Eric Jones. I can't get out of here. He looked super squirrely. He almost wrecked the car. I think they'll get it figured out, and I think he'll be fine come tomorrow. I mean, he's got 2 top 10s in the 4 new Atlanta races. So I think he'll be a great play, but he's going to be extremely rostered.
Yep, and just plan accordingly. If you start Chase Elliott, you put in Eric Jones. You need to have a pivot off of that if you're going if you're going
Yeah.
GPP. If you're doing cash,
Oh yeah.
Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Eric Jones seems like a really nice way to start. And I think I might do a little more cash this week. I like the tournaments. I like the upside, but getting smoked every single week and having your balances not be there, because you're gonna if you need if you hit one, then you'll make up for all of it. But adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, on that note, last week I think I finished like 4,000th or something out of 17,000 people. And that's obviously not great, but like I won $6 on my $3 entry. So
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and in tournaments, like, I want to either get smoked or be first place. I don't really want to land in between if I can avoid it. Let's talk about the 7K range where Ty Gibbs starts us off 7,800. Michael McDowell, the pole sitter, his first pole in NASCAR. Shouts to him. Shouts to Cody Zeeb over at the what's their podcast called?
Sports Gambling
Sports
Podcast
Gambling
Network.
Podcast. They have a NASCAR one. He mentioned he was actually saw it in the comments of the NASCAR betting preview show hosted by Derek Yoder. About McDowell and possibly being a good pole bet. Grabbed it 40, quickly went to 20, puts it on the pole. It was a nice day. So far, so good week. And I'm happy with that. But I don't know how much I'll have of him in DraftKings, if any. Stenhouse starting 27th at 75. Daniel Suarez, I'm in on him. I have him to win. I have him for top Chevy. I have him in a few spots, 7,300. I think I could find myself getting there. As I mentioned, Austin Dillon, both of the RCR cars made it into the top 10, which is good to see. Cindric, 7K. All the Penske guys got in that top 10 as well, which is, I don't know if it's shocking, but definitely good to see. That car should be really, really strong. And, maybe you don't go too heavy on them for DraftKings, but when we come to the betting window, it becomes a lot more appealing. Are you interested in any of these guys in the 7K range?
Look, if you want to get weird, Michael McDowell at 7,700 starting on the pole is a perfect, like, be different play. Joey Logano won this race from the pole in the spring last year. He led 140 laps in doing so as well. So he led over 75% of all the laps run. I don't think these guys are going to get too crazy because of the fact that this is the second race of the year, and especially dudes that say didn't perform well at Daytona. You don't necessarily want to go 2 races into the year and be that far at a disadvantage when, like, starting the real racing. Yeah. I think McDowell is a really good super speedway racer. He's got a Daytona 500 win for that reason. And so, look, you're taking a huge risk with him losing a lot of placement points. I mean, Almirola, for instance, started on the pole, finished 18th, but he led 40 laps. So probably got 15 points. So you screwed yourself there, but you're saving a ton of salary. You could still go up and get a Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and even an Eric Jones, and then just get the super cheap dudes later.
Yeah, I think this range is really interesting. I think if you have a strong feeling about somebody, I think you're going to have a way to differentiate yourself. I don't know if any of these guys are going to be incredibly popular. Maybe, I guess based on what I'm looking at, Cindric's the only guy that's even approaching double digit. Everyone else is kind of like in that 1 to 3 or 4%. So I would be pretty surprised if any of these guys garner a ton of ownership. So if you're very interested in one of them, you want to build your lineups, you're in on Stenhouse, you're in on Suarez like I am. I think it could be a good spot because it's so easy to go up to either the 8K range or down as we dive into the 6K range where there's a lot of interesting names. Yep. Mentioned Corey LaJoie, wearing the Corey LaJoie shirt this week. Starting 32nd, 6,800 makes a lot of sense. My boy Chase Briscoe got it inside the top 10. Probably won't use him in DraftKings. No. Ryan Preece, his teammate, starting 20th, 6,500. Gragson, his teammate, 6,300. John Hunter starting 34th.
And he's going to be extremely popular as well.
Yeah, and Josh Berry. So it's just like this is just the SHR range. Are you in on any of the SHR cars, LaJoie or Nemechek?
I mean, Corey LaJoy, last week he was my favorite play. I mean, you saw it on my betting card. He was in our DraftKings lineups. I'll probably get there with him a little bit this week as well, just because he rides a little bit safer than he did earlier in his career, and then he's trying to put himself in position late to finish well, and so I think that's a good jumping off point for him, is that you're getting somebody who's not trying to push it early. He may not finish the first couple of stages very well, but coming down to the end, he's going to make some pit call or something to get themselves battling for a top 10 position. And I mean, you're looking at potential 20 placement points on that with the upside of a top 5. I mean, I believe he finished 4th here last year. So LaJoy is a great play. I don't hate Ryan Preece. I always like him on Super Speedway styles, but I don't know. SHR is scary. And then John Hunter Nemechek, I think he's going to be one of the guys that wrecks out. That's just my opinion.
Well, if you feel that strongly, fading him is going to be the move, because he's going to be, as you mentioned, very popular.
He's going to be very popular. Yeah.
Depending on the contest, he could be in the 40 to 50% rostered. So if you fade him and you get that right, you will be looking very nice. So that is another way where if you want to be different, fading someone doesn't necessarily even have to be going in on someone. You could just, there's a name or two, you're like, I don't see it. Fading him is the move. Especially if you think maybe a Priest, or as we dive into the rest of the options, Carson Hocevar starting one spot behind him, 5,900. Todd Gillen, top 5. Good job, Todd. No interest in DraftKings. Zane Smith, Daniel Hemrick, Harrison Burton, Justin Haley, Kaz Gralla, Josh Williams.
I love that.
Could be super very cheap. Interesting. 5K. We talked. Greg Mathern on the NASCAR betting preview talked about him. He's in the 16 that AJ Allmendinger drove really well in Atlanta last year. Could be a really strong race, and if you want to get some of those high-priced options, I think he's going to be probably our favorite option of this range. And I don't know that a lot of people are going to actually get to him, which is even better. And then our boy BJ McLeod, just 36th in it up. Okay, so we both are in on Josh Williams. Is there anybody else, basically sub 6K that you're into?
I mean, I don't hate our guy BJ. Look, his car is slow as hell, but if he could just keep the damn rims on it, he could get there with a top 20. If we get the carnage that we saw, the first year on the new configuration. Last year it was a little subdued. Guys were a little bit safer here, so I'm wondering if we're going to get a little bit cleaner of a race. So I don't know if he presents the potential value that we're expecting, and if they do anything like we saw last week at Daytona, where they just kind of ride around in a train, you're not going to get that either. So, but at $4,800, what's the worst that can happen? He's the first guy that wrecks out and you basically punted on one of your positions, where you can still be in the green with one guy starting there if you just get a 0 instead of a negative,
And I think if you do like 2 of Justin Haley, Josh Williams, BJ McLeod, that's a very unique lineup. Do all 3 of them and go with 3 high-priced guys. Very unique lineup. So there's ways to get unique, ways to get different. With that being said, Brian, let's build a lineup and see what we can put together. So who is your favorite option to make sure we include this week?
Only because no, I can't. This is really hard. All right,
the names that jump out to me are obviously
do Ace.
Yeah, Chase Elliott.
Yep.
Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones. I think the guys that we just talked about, Haley. I think Corey LaJoy is interesting. Josh Williams and BJ is fine. I don't know that I'd use both of them. Ross Chastain.
He's my favorite play this week on everything. Betting, DFS, like ooh. I mean, do you want to go the all Trackhouse road? Trackhouse has been really good, but do you trust that?
We could go all Trackhouse. I like that. I think that's a little unique too.
Because I don't think a lot of people are going to do that.
I don't think a lot of people are going to go to Suarez kind of in general.
I am worried that in this particular bill we have no Fords because they've been great here.
Yeah, we should probably hit a couple Fords. Question is who? Because most of them ended up in that top 10. Unless we just pick one of them.
Well, how gross would it be if you put Logano in there?
Pretty gross.
Because
You prefer Logano to Blaney?
I mean, not really personally.
Not like,
but
I know not from like a fan sense, but in terms of
Logano's already proven he can win here from the front row. He won from the pole last year.
Yeah.
And if he jumps out ahead of it's going to be him and Michael McDowell early on leading all the laps.
Yeah.
And who do you trust more to be there at the end, Logano or McDowell? Or Logano or Blaney, actually, for that matter?
I think Blaney. I think I trust him most, but I also see your point where, especially early, if they want to run around for a while, Logano jumps to the front and just kind of leads the laps for a while, and then is a contender at the end. I could see that.
And he's probably the best in the field in manufacturing track position off of pit road stops.
And honestly, I think that's that made between Logano and Suarez and even Josh Williams, really. Like, this lineup is so unique. Like, we don't even need to use Williams unless so we can look at where we want to get in. Because if we end up going with I like Eric Jones, I think especially with this lineup, it makes sense. We can leave 1,000 on the table, or we can go like Haley is interesting at 53. Yeah, I think he's the only pivot off of Williams. Like, with this lineup and the amount of salary we're still saving, do you feel better about Justin Haley putting in a good result, starting one spot behind Williams, or do you think Williams is worth the squeeze given his car and kind of expectations?
Honestly, I would probably rather have Haley just because he's run here in Cup on the new configuration, which is dramatically different from...
Yeah, because I could see Williams having a fine race, but then end up getting a speeding penalty or something because he's not and having issues. Yeah, I like this lineup a lot.
That's really gross. Look, for me to back putting Joey Logano from the front row at a super speedway, it really says a lot about how good he is here.
All right, let's see. Let's build one more. I think Chase Elliott has to be in this one too. And I know it's gross, but I think it's a requirement. We'll see how weird we want to get. And that'll help figure out the rest of the stuff.
We're gonna go Chase Elliott double.
Yeah, for sure. Do we want to add another Hendrick guy? Do we want to? I don't mind LaJoy again. Just trying to think about how we can build. That doesn't necessarily have to be 6 for 6 different, but I think a pivot that we could do the Christopher Bell thing, but then I think we might need to get in.
Did we have Keselowski in the other one?
No,
right?
We should do that.
Yeah, so I think Keselowski, Bell. I mean, that's putting us at a disadvantage for salary, but at these tracks you can easily get under.
And I think Bell from a roster percentage is gonna be, well, it might be a little more popular than I was thinking initially. I think Eric Jones is a must, even though it's gross, and then I think we have to be weird. So, like Williams, I guess we don't have to be that weird. No, we have to be below 8,800, but it has to be kind of a pivot from a salary.
I mean, what about putting Alex Bowman in there? I mean, he's kind of the under the radar HMS guy again. I mean, he's coming off a runner-up finish at Daytona. I
just worry because of where he's starting and the fact that he's a Hendrick guy and the fact that he looked pretty good last week. He gains a little more ownership than I think we're optimistic about.
Yeah.
Like, Cindric.
I worry about him starting up front.
Yeah.
I don't trust him anywhere near as much as I trust a Ryan Blaney or Joey Logano.
Let's see here. Like, I almost want to go back to Ross.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't hate it. Look, I love Ross Chastain this week.
I mean, just think about, like, yeah, it's might be a little more popular, but I think going with Williams is going to give us a unique angle. I think, we have legitimately 4.5 drivers that could win this whole
the
thing.
race. Yeah.
Like, if you tell me that we get to Sunday and we're on the final restart and Elliott's like 3 and Keselowski's 2 and Ross is 5 and Christopher Bell's like 4-1.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's crazy. And maybe carnage ensues and they all get knocked out of the way, but I think this is a fun lineup.
Yeah, no, I don't hate that at all. I actually like that. We're getting funky with double ownership and
funky with ownership. That's what we should call this podcast. Funky with ownership. So that was fun. If you guys have questions or you want our input, don't hesitate to reach out. As I mentioned, aoppodcast.substack.com. We will be putting out our favorite DFS plays. We'll each write up 3. We'll each write up a couple bets. Checking Underdog right now, as I don't think NASCAR stuff's been put up yet.
Yikes! Christian Eckes is going to the garage in the truck race. Sorry, y'all. Very popular pick today.
Seems to do that. Okay. I think that's it. I'm seeing if there's any like crazy line movement in the outright odds before that we should discuss before we get out of here, but I don't think there is. Logano, Larson, Elliott, Blaney, Bush. Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty much the same.
Yeah, I haven't even seen people like repost much.
Corey LaJoy at 28 at DK seems weird. Eric Jones at 40. I guess, are you, we talked about a little bit of the concern about guys starting near the back. Like, I think we're both optimistic, and especially from a DFS perspective, that Jones can be really, valuable.
Yeah.
But, like, is he good enough to get top 3 where he's contending for a win at the end?
I think it would take a couple of wrecks to knock a few people out for him to do that. I like him potential top 10, but the odds just aren't indicative of wanting that.
Yeah. Briscoe at 55 is interesting. I know I do this every week, but I think at shorter, flatter, and super speedways. All right, Brian Twining, this was fun. We will be, like I said, we'll link everything in the description. So if you are wanting to get on board with any of our Substack, completely free, set it up. You can get email notifications every morning right before the race. You can join our GridRivals contest to compete for a $100 Fanatics gift card, which is also completely free. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are smashing that like button. Make sure you let us know your favorite value pick below 7K. I always like to get the community's ideas in our head because I think you guys are very smart, and I think you can get us to drivers that maybe we weren't initially considering or not considering as strong as we should have.
It's all about it's all about winning, not about being right.
Well, yeah, sometimes that comes with both, but that's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the race. We will be back on Tuesday to break down Las Vegas, probably our favorite race, mostly because that's the one we go to all the time.
Yeah.
From a betting perspective, and then we'll be back obviously next weekend to get you ready for DFS. Brian, this train is rolling down the tracks. There's no sign of stopping.
Nope.
Let's win some money. Let's cash some tickets. Let's take down a GPP and have one hell of a weekend. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert. We'll talk to you next time.